who polices it? And then not only that is that when it's applied, it's applied inconsistently and frequently used as a tool of retaliation against teachers that are walk out of line of you guys as screwed up military. I've never in my life seen anything like it. And yes, you can disagree with me and you can not like my language, but I speak plainly. I've never seen it's the most dysfunctional hierarchy I've ever seen. You know, superintendent, principals, teachers, to where, you know, and understand, I only get involved when there's problems. It's not like people are calling me up saying, oh, my program's great, can you come look at it? That's just not what I do. I always deal with problems. So of course, I am always cognizant that that's what I'm looking at, which means that I know that the mass majority of the time it's awesome. Awesome things are happening. But I'm telling you, my perspective, when I go into these meetings, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, I'm sitting there, and you guys can attest to this as well. I can always tell when I've got a bad director, because I've got 4 people sitting there, and he or she's the only one talking. And the rest of them are looking down, will not participate in the meetings. To where we're not really having an IEP meeting, we're having an administrator meeting to where the administrator's talking at us, and there's not a flow of communication, brainstorming, or benefit to the child because of the hierarchy. When a principal's in control of the meeting, it is exactly the same thing. And then you hear rumors. I mean, guys, I know, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I have teachers that trust me all over the state. And they'll send me private messages. They'll send me letters in the mail that won't have return addresses on it, letting me know what's going on around here. Because they know I'll never throw them under the bus. I won't do it. I won't even, the board attorneys half the time don't even know. But I know what's going on when I'm sitting at a meeting. And it's horrible that we've created an environment to where our public educators feel more comfortable coming to me than coming to their own administrators to solve problems. I'm proud about that at the same time, because I like that our teachers are not viewing me as an enemy, because I'm not. None of my settlement agreements work without you guys, without the educators, without the administrators. Do not work. I look good because you guys do a great job when we're able to fix problems. You know, I'm not looking at you all the time. I'm trying to scan the crowd, but, you know. And I also gauge it on whether I have to go back, and I don't have to go back. Very rarely do I have issues with your school system, and that's a testament to you guys. Okay. So that's part of my handout there. But in the red, a small minority of teachers, an ugly undercurrent of mean-spirited and disdainful conduct towards students also exists. This conduct constitutes a corruption of the role of educator and does enormous damage to students, colleagues, and the public's faith in schools. Guys, I can't reiterate that enough because it's so true. The State Department of Education in Alabama does not track this number, but we have an increasing population in this state. But yet our enrollment numbers in public education are stagnant and in some areas are going down. Now, how do you explain that? Nobody's having kids? That's not true. They don't track it because maybe they don't want to track it. But the problem is that more people are abandoning the system. They are abandoning public education for homeschooling. They are abandoning public education for private schooling, for church schools. Alabama has one of the strongest homeschooling protections in the state, which I find absolutely ironic and moronic, quite frankly, because at the same time we have a compulsory education law that the schools love to implement and the juvenile courts love to enforce. But yet these parents that people are going, oh, well, you know, I'm referring them to truancy because they want their kid on their Xbox all day after they sit in a doctor's office all day and pay a copay. You know, kids just sitting at home on their Xbox. There's an easier way for the derelict parents to get away with things, and that is just to homeschool them. And that's why I'm telling you that the conspiracy theories out there are ridiculous. That's why we need to really look at if there's underlying reasons. And there are bad parents out there, guys. I'm not saying that there's not. But I'm a libertarian type of thinker, and I am absolutely one of these attorneys that believe that the law is there to protect the innocent, and that you as government have a higher duty to ensure that you're not snagging the innocent in your net. All right? So, the guy who wrote this, Alan McAvoy, is an expert in bullying and I think school security is what he said. His problem with this is that it's not followed or it's not tracked. And he quotes a Center of Disease Control document where they did a study and where the Center of Disease Control absolutely came out and they excluded abuse perpetrated by adults against children or youth. They purposely did not put that in there. And so we don't have any national studies on patterns of bullying by educators, and only a few limited studies exist that begin to document the phenomena. But I'm telling you, standing here, I can't tell you how many of these cases, and it's gone up exponentially. It's insane what I'm dealing with now. We just started a case, and the reason I'm going to bring this up is that it's 3 separate school systems, the same exact behavior. And they're not the same. In fact, they're in different parts of the state. So I sit there and I think to myself, what kind of screwed up conference did these people go to? You know, because when I have the same type of behavior in 3 different places within the first 9 weeks of school, then something's amiss. But what they involve are reports of support staff or special educators pinching the students under their arms and on the palm of their hands as to not leave any bruises. 3 different schools, same exact behavior. Except the one that I just started, she broke the skin. The kid has CP and she was pinching his hand that's not really used. And she broke the skin in multiple places. And so, problem is that the child was telling the parent. The parent told the principal and the special ed director. Special ed director and the principal ignored it. She's a Christian. She's a nice person. She's great. We love her. So they did not do an investigation. They did not refer to DHR. Guys, you're mandatory reporters on yourself as well. In the county that I love, that I trusted my own child with when we were here, they did an internal investigation at the beginning of school after one of their teachers slapped or hit my client, 5 years old, kindergarten. Put her on administrative leave while they did an internal investigation. Didn't refer to DHR. Didn't even have their SRO investigate because the SROs are all paid by the schools now, so I don't really get a neutral investigation of anything because now they're on the payroll. You know, it's the worst type of mob activity I've ever seen. I need a neutral investigator. You guys just should not be able to investigate yourself because you're coworkers. There's politics involved in this. There's emotion involved in this. And I want to tell you before I jump into this, and part of the segment may flow into the next one because the next one isn't, that exhaustive to review. Whereas this is important because I'm going to talk about retaliation and the legal risks that you guys have. The legal risks have been there. The only problem is that there haven't been attorneys to hold you guys to account. But that's changing because the Council of Parent Attorney Advocates, of which we belong, because we're seeing such a spike in issues in these areas, we're starting to turn our attention, and that's how corrective change happens, unfortunately. Because our police aren't doing their job. DHR is not doing their job. And I've got some embedded bad people in here making excuses for their behavior, shrouding it under things like discipline, shrouding it under things like concern, when in reality they're not. And so the laws are there. 504 and ADA protect our teachers. So teachers can absolutely use 504 and ADA. There's a provision in Title VI that allows a teacher, an administrator, to file a complaint on behalf of their students and for themselves for advocating for their students and being retaliated against by their school system. And the case that we're going to look at out of Portland, that lady got over $1 million. Adaptive PE teacher. $50,000 from a principal. And $50,000 from an assistant superintendent. Because they were the ringleaders in firing her or not renewing her contract. That's the nice way to say it, right? But we're going to get into that. But I want to tell you a quick story, and then we're going to take our first break. But the people that you work with, your colleagues, you really don't know them. You really don't know them. And so a case I had up in Northwest Alabama, I had this child that the parent was an older parent. She adopted this child out of foster care. He came from an abusive family. His parents were drug addicted. Went into the foster care program. And he was staying with her as a foster child. And of course, he just said, "I want you to be my mom." And she melted. She said, "I would love to." She adopted him. Then he goes to school, has an IEP. His real issue was reactive attachment disorder, of course. And then they put him, they trotted him out of general education because he would have meltdowns every once in a while and put him in a behavior unit. This teacher constructed in her classroom, or had constructed, she didn't do it herself, she had maintenance do it with the support of the principal, a square box in the corner of the classroom with the door facing the wall. So anybody walking by could not see the door because the door was on the opposite side of the box. Flush on the inside, no knob. It was just a flush metal plate that they had put over where the doorknob was. So there was no lock on the outside, which was how they got around the seclusion rule. Can't lock the door. Didn't say anything about having a knob on the other side, even though it does say that the child has to be able to. There's a lot of gray area there. I mean, there was no logic into thinking. Okay, but that's what they did. So you put a child in there. There's no way for the child to get out. They had a window so they could look at the child screaming and pounding on the door, crying. The child would tell the mother, they ignored her. This lady is an angel. This lady is one of our best teachers. This lady is so knowledgeable. This lady's trying to help your child. Ignored what the child was reporting. Ignored it. They did no tangible investigation whatsoever. Excused it. And then every time she would have an issue, she would code red the SRO. The SRO would come in. Of course, the SRO had no idea what was going on, took their word for it, and then would participate. My thought is that she liked the SRO, so she was using every opportunity to have him in there because I could hear on the recordings her flirting with him while my clients was screaming, bloody murder to try to get out of the room. Now, how do I know this? Nobody was listening. So the parent put a recorder on the child. So I have recordings, and they're disgusting recordings, to where now I have a police officer saying when he's saying, I didn't do anything, I'm going to tell on you, and having the adult say, who's going to believe you? Nobody's going to believe you. Oh yeah, they were also laughing about throwing the 10-year-old down. I mean, it had reached a point of insanity. Principal supported it. SRO supported it. The teacher shrouded it. You know what it was all about? It was all over a pencil. He was 10 years old, wanted to use a pencil. They would only let him use a crayon. And he got into a disagreement with them that he's a big boy and he wanted to use a pencil. That's why he was thrown in that closet 5 different times over the course of 6 hours. 3 of which was at the hands of the police officer. So nobody was there to protect this child who had reactive attachment disorder. Now, they still did not want to see who this teacher really was. But what we ended up finding out, because this is in a small rural community, is that this lady's son came forward to tell people in the community that her mother, that his mother, that's how she raised him. She would frequently throw him in a closet and lock the door when he was a child. He would soil himself. He would be in the closet for so long, not being able to get out. Now, this is a pattern. She did it to him. So in her mind, this is how you parent. And who knows what she was exposed to as a child. That was her example, maybe. But that is how she parented her own child. So when she went to school, of course, that's how you parent. That's how you teach. That's how you instill discipline. Because that was her only example. And it was allowed because the state of Alabama allows a lot of flexibility given to teachers with immunity to be able to control their classroom. And because they don't define what those parameters are, then you have something called mission creep. If you don't clearly define the parameters of the rules under the 4 corners of a document, then you can expect the government entity to expand its role, to reach out, to create new definitions, to decide what applies and what doesn't apply. And that entire thing, once it was exposed that her son was subjected to the same abusive behavior, now all of a sudden people could see it was abuse. It wasn't class management. It wasn't discipline. And so this person, who all of these professionals thought was a good Christian mother, or a good Christian in the community, a good upstanding person, a great colleague, a great coworker, she was to them. Nobody was able to see behind the curtain. And so she had hoodwinked all of them. And we had destroyed a child psychologically and emotionally in the process. Because the principal and the police officer did not do their job in thoroughly investigating the claims of the child. So who do you think's in trouble on that one? All of them. Because under these rules, the principal has a responsibility to thoroughly investigate and do it in a way and document it in a way that would cover his or her behind. Did not happen because I know her. She's a good person. When, in fact, they didn't know her at all. Let's take our first break, and then we'll be right back at it at 10 after 10.